Tough to follow Mayor Corrigan there, but I'll do my best. I want to start by acknowledging that we're on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, that's Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam. And I want to really thank the Tsleil-Waututh welcoming, Carleen, Dave, and Deanna. Thank you for your work and your leadership on this issue. Also to the previous speakers, Kennedy, Stewart, and Mayor Corrigan, I've been really inspired to have seen so much work and organizing happening on all levels of government in opposition to this ridiculous project. My name is Eugene Kung. I'm a staff lawyer with West Coast Environmental Law. We're based in Vancouver. And I'm really happy to be here today on Burnaby Mountain and to see so many amazing people coming out, enjoying the sun, enjoying some music, getting together. I've actually been coming to this mountain since I was about 3 years old. In the 80s, I went to daycare just over the hill up at SFU. And so I've spent a lot of time here, and some of my earliest memories of collecting tadpoles from ponds and just running around in the forest came right on this very mountain. And I was here because my father, right over here filming me, hi Dad, wave your hand. He was working here as an engineer and working on the construction of the ring road that goes up just past, right at the intersection at the top of SFU. And I remember talking to him about it when I was a little boy and telling me the steps that they took to make sure that in putting in that project, implementing that project, they disturbed the land the least possible. They replanted with local vegetation to stabilize the hills and to feed the local wildlife. There's deer, you saw the signs of bear sightings around here. And that's because this place is really special and really beautiful. We heard about Mayor Corrigan talking about its designation as a park and the idea, the absurdity of Kinder Morgan's arrogance to just overlook that and say, no, you know what? It may be a park, it may be protected, but we need to tunnel through. And I just want to make a note about that. The reason that we're here today, the reason that the NEB process has already been delayed by 7 months, is that Kinder Morgan has decided that it's easier to drill through a mountain than to convince people this is a good idea. And that's all of you people who have stood up and made your voices heard. And that's something I think that we should be celebrated. But it's not just happening here on Burnaby Mountain or here in Burnaby or even in the Lower Mainland. We heard this week that Kinder Morgan has applied to have 4 provincial park boundaries changed so that they can put their pipeline through 4 provincial parks. We know that the law that allowed them to make those applications was passed very recently and retroactively because the province, who had already been issuing some park use permits, realized that those were probably illegal. So a lot of the information that's in the Kinder Morgan application before the NEB was likely obtained illegally. I'm not holding out a lot of hope for the NEB to take that and dismiss the evidence itself, but this is what we're up against. This is the attitude of this company who doesn't care about the people, who doesn't care about the decisions that have been made to preserve and protect land for future generations, and who just cares about the bottom line. We've heard a few mentions of the Chilcotin decision recently from the Supreme Court of Canada, and I won't get too in the weeds on it, but I have to talk about it a little bit. As a lawyer, it's my responsibility or duty. One thing that I've been thinking about when thinking about the parklands and the way that Kinder Morgan is just wanting to run roughshod over them is this idea that was discussed in that case about what the nature of Aboriginal title was. And one of the things they talk about is that decisions about land that are Aboriginal title land need to be made in a way that respects the collective nature of that right and that won't deprive it for future generations. And I think about how amazing it would be if we could see all of our public lands and make decisions about them in that same way. Why aren't we? Why aren't we recognizing that these are our collective jewels and values, and that we should be making decisions that think about future generations? I couldn't help but think about when Mayor Corrigan talked about the David and Goliath story, a book that I was reading recently by Malcolm Gladwell that talks about David and Goliath and how our whole conception of it is a little skewed. We think about the tiny David fighting against this massive Goliath against all odds. And we all know the outcome of that, as Mayor Corrigan talked about. But what this book says is, what he talks about is, our version of that story, our understanding of that story is actually a little skewed. If you remember, David, the little shepherd, came down to fight against Goliath in a one-on-one battle, and Goliath was there with his big shield and his big sword, and in fact, he actually had someone to carry the sword for him out there, and they were gonna engage in this kind of battle that had all kinds of ceremony and systems to it, and that's what Goliath was there for, and he looked invincible in that. He was huge, he had the biggest sword. David came down, he said, I don't want a sword, I don't want a shield. I've got my sling, and I've got a few stones. And we all know what happened. He shot a few stones, precisely hit Goliath in the head, he fell down. And what I think, what the book says about our misunderstanding of that story is that we are all going along with the rules of the game that Goliath was expecting. He was expecting a one-on-one hand battle, swords and shields. And in fact, what David did was he said, screw those rules. I'm gonna lose if I play by those rules. Because look how big that guy is. But what he did instead was he took the element of surprise. He took the weakness of Goliath, his inability to move, his inability to see, and he hit him with a precise shot. And I think about the approach that Burnaby's taking, I think about the leadership that Tsleil-Waututh is taking in their court challenges against the NEB, and we know that the federal government has rigged the rules so that the NEB will likely come away with a positive recommendation. But I don't want to play by those rules. I don't think we should be limited by those rules. And that's how we're gonna win. That's how we can beat this Goliath. It's too blind in its own greed to really understand the power of people who are standing up. So I just want to thank you all for coming. Really happy to be here. Such a beautiful day. Hi, Mom. Thanks again. See you soon.